This week, it's more of the same, because people refuse to learn from history. I'm DJ Alex, and this is your Hunky Vape Global 20 Vaping News Science and Advocacy Report for the week ending September 19th, 2021. In 1948, at the House of Commons, Winston Churchill said, "Those who fail to learn from history are condemned to repeat it." So, with that in mind this week, we revisit previous stories to learn how we can adapt and overcome the obstacles facing vapers today. First and foremost is the latest FDA marketing denial orders, which effectively bans millions of vaping products. Is this a farewell to e-cigarettes? The American Council on Science and Health reports the FDA just took a significant step toward killing the vaping industry while ostensibly acting to protect public health. The agency has effectively banned millions of products and made it harder for smokers to give up their deadly habit. Cameron English writes, vaping companies rushed to submit more than 6.5 million applications by the September 9th deadline. The agency rejected the majority of these, and none have so far been approved. Looking at the FDA website for marketing denial orders, we see, like all government organizations, they took out the trash last Friday and updated their MDO list. The latest MDO list, released September 17th, has 241 companies, including new additions like Heartland Vapes, Vapetasia, Beard Vape Company, Awesome Sauce, Element E-Liquid, Avail Vapor, Humble Juice Company, Ruthless Vapor Corporation, and many, many others. And like I said in my previous video, RIP big vape companies. Pay attention, people. And by people, I mean everyone, including government bureaucrats, agencies, advocates, and all of you vapors watching this news report. These big corporations and their businesses are not just going to pick up their bat and ball and go home, simply because the FDA didn't authorize their products for sale. We've all heard by now that some juice manufacturers are going to reformulate their products with synthetic nicotine. This isn't anything new. When the government banned flavored vaping products last year, did Puff Bar stop selling flavored products? No, they just switched to synthetic nicotine. We covered that story a long time ago. Realistically, a $7.5 billion a year industry isn't going to just disappear because the FDA didn't authorize these products. Of all the hoopla about the massive FDA MDOs, seller Caleb Griffith and advocate Greg Connolly said it best. FDA ban in e-cigarette flavors won't put out vape use. Published in the Weatherford Democrat, Glenn Evans documents, action last Thursday by the Federal Food and Drug Administration to reject the applications of more than 900,000 makers of e-cigarettes and related products will not snuff out all adult use of nicotine delivery devices. Shop owner Griffith says, "Our biggest thing here is trying to get long-time smokers off of cigarettes." That's a premise the FDA said in its announcement last week is not proven. Connolly and Griffith strongly disagree with that. The amount of people I've seen it help, from 90-year-old grandmothers who smoked, and now they are able to smell and take a breath. It's not what you hear on the news. In the article, Greg Connolly even cited the latest piece from the American Journal of Public Health, in which 15 past presidents of the Society for Research on Nicotine and Tobacco asked policymakers to weigh smokers' success at using e-cigarettes to quit long-term habits. We covered that research paper already. But here's another opportunity for us to learn from history. One of the fundamental concepts that I retained from college in the communications class I had to take is that you need to understand the audience of which you are talking to. So Who is this modern day audience that this paper should be writing towards? Well, to answer that question, I need to introduce you to comedian George Carlin. Why is it that comedians can always point out obvious flaws in society? Anyway, in 2008, George Carlin performed his Emmy-nominated 14th and final HBO special, It's Bad For Ya. I think his cheeky and unapologetic observations on overprotected children clearly document why we are dealing with child worship bullshit from organizations like PAVE.
Speaking of parents and speaking of bullshit, two ideas which aren't always mutually exclusive, by the way, I'd like to mention a special kind of bullshit that has taken hold in this country in the last 30 to 40 years. It's a form of bullshit that really only can be called child worship. It's child worship. It's this excessive devotion to children. I'm talking about today's professional parents, these obsessive diaper sniffers who are overscheduling and overmanaging their children and robbing them of their childhoods. Even the simple act of playing has been taken away from children and put on mommy's schedule in the form of play dates. Something that should be spontaneous and free is now being rigidly planned. When does a kid ever get to sit in the yard with a stick anymore? You know, just sit there with a fucking stick. Do today's kids even know what a stick is? You know? You sit in the yard with a fucking stick and you dig a fucking hole. You know? Yeah.
Yep, that's the kind of parent who would go and form an organization like PAVE. Adults are supposed to say goodbye to their vapes because some kid decided a vape was more fun than studying for their college entrance exams at the age of 10. Maybe these parents should have let their kid play with a stick, or play tag, or dodgeball, or go outside and play like our parents told us to go do. Nope. These parents won't even let their kids stand around for fear that their kid's leg's gonna fall asleep. We have an entire generation of kids that were raised thinking that they're always the winner, who gets a participation trophy every single time they just show up. And they were never told
those all-important character-building words, you lost, Bobby. You lost. You're a loser, Bobby. They miss out on that. You know what they tell a kid who lost these days? You were the last winner.
Don't believe me? Just take a look at American Lung Association Ambassador Laura Dern, who doesn't punish her kids because she thinks it's more important to have a real dialogue around consequences, instead of her kids actually facing consequences or judgment for their actions. For this generation of award-winning parents, it's not their kid's fault when a kid fails to do the right thing. It's somebody else's fault. These award-winning parents are simply incapable of punishing their law-breaking kids. Moving on. For this next story, published in the Detroit Metro Times, I need to thank Mallory Gates for sending it to me on Twitter. The New York Times still doesn't understand the difference between vaping black market weed and regular e-cigarettes. Apparently, the mainstream media has learned nothing from the big vaping scare from a couple years ago, with even outlets like the New York Times still getting basic facts about it wrong. This article rightly calls out the mainstream media repeatedly conflating the two issues without clarifying. Black market cannabis is responsible for EVALI and not e-cigs or nicotine vaping. It even goes so far as to point out that the hyperlinked 68 people who died leads to the CDC website, which clearly states national and state data from patient reports and product sample testing show tetrahydrocannabinol, THC, containing e-cigarette or vaping products, particularly from informal sources like friends, family, or in-person or online dealers, are linked to most Uvalde cases and play a major role in the outbreak. THC, of course, is the main component in marijuana that makes you high. In other words, the deaths have nothing to do with Juul and everything to do with black market cannabis oil. That editors at one of the world's top news organizations is still getting this wrong is alarming, to say the least. It's no wonder so many people were confused about vaping. Looking back, this article reminds me of a previous relevant video right on this channel. U.S. national news media, bad news bias, is killing 320,000 annually. It is beyond time for mainstream media to accept responsibility for the vaping misinformation that is costing people their lives. The New York Times' lack of clarification on the actual cause of Uvalde means those who use black market THC carts failed to get the warnings they need to avoid these products, and smokers failed to try harm reduction products because of the same misinformation. The New York Times isn't alone publishing misinformation. Last week, we talked about how social media misinformation altering smokers' willingness to try harm reduction products. Well, this week, the Wall Street Journal, in silent partnership with the American Legacy Foundation, otherwise known as Truth Initiative, attempted disseminating a new anti-vaping campaign around a fake product called Depression Stick. The larger marketing campaign is titled, "It's Messing with Our Heads." But if you're a smoker, the campaign should be titled, "This campaign may cost you your life." Not only is this campaign being pushed in the print online media, but it's also slated in commercial form to air during NFL games. If you missed the advertisement, you can watch it right here on YouTube. There's a link in the description below for you to check out. The commercial starts off with a guy who says he helped create a vape which makes depression convenient. This is what your tax dollars and MSA funds is now promoting. A fake product that makes a mockery of depression, sadness, stress, and mental health, and says all vape products amplify these feelings. Looking at the comments for this commercial, it's obvious the people are not buying it. But it doesn't end there. Jumping onto Twitter, we see that the Depression Stick was reported to Twitter for their disgusting campaign, which ridicules mental illness. Twitter then took all of Depression Stick's tweets down for violating Twitter rules. And for some, the tweets are no longer available. But looking at their webpage today, I guess if you have enough money, you can say or do whatever you want, including ridicule mental illness. Meanwhile, Bidi Vapor is talking about the fight for flavors. How one independent e-cigarette maker followed the FDA's review process to the bitter ends. All pun intended. Published in Yahoo Finance from Globe Newswire, Melbourne-based Bidi Vapor president and CEO says, "In the end, the FDA is not going to support any industry that won't take responsibility. Neither will the public. The decision, which will essentially take flavored ends products off the U.S. market, may indeed keep some young people from either trying or actively using vaping products. But in doing so, the decision will carry with it the cost of millions of adult smokers losing access to perhaps the most viable alternative to combustible cigarettes ever invented." In the same move, the FDA also unleashed the floodgates of illicit, subpar, and potentially hazardous products within an industry that the agency was trying to regulate. Like any other prohibition, The established demand for flavored ends products will now undoubtedly grow unchecked, creating the need for a new level of enforcement without funding from properly administered taxation. The story continues on, throwing Juul and others under the bus, but also brings to light that the FDA was a moving target, issuing draft guidance a month after the PMTA applications were due to the FDA. Later, he even talks about the same article from the American Journal of Public Health, calling for a balance between the needs of adult smokers and keeping youth from vaping. Then, they talked about synthetic nicotine, working with U.S. Customs and Border Protection and the ATF to combat illegal activity. Lastly, the article talks about how Bidi Vapor remains committed to demonstrate all 11 flavors of its Bidi sticks are appropriate for the protection of public health, and the company will continue to update and amend its PMTA submissions as ongoing studies are completed. Here's exactly where the big corporate vape companies clench the market and continue to push the FDA to approve their products. Companies like Bidi Vapor are large international corporations who can survive an FDA MDO because they can still sell their products internationally. Their international sales volume allows funding science and lawyers to continue to fight for the U.S. marketing orders. Meanwhile, smaller companies face an existential crisis. Do they give up? Or do they continue selling their products as black or gray market items? Now I understand why Matt, Jim, Nick, and Danielle had such a laissez-faire reaction to the FDA regs and the MDOs that were released. Matt even said he's optimistic about some e-liquids going through. You know what? Here's exactly what he said.
Authorized.
Right. Nothing's been authorized yet. Literally nothing.
It's so tough to say. Like like I said earlier, the optimistic side of me thinks that some e-liquids get through, not a lot, but some. And then there's another side of me that, like, you know, if we start seeing like some news stories and some studies about open vapor and fucking crazy shit happening, and we start hearing about, you know, mods blowing up in people's pockets again, then we know that they're prepping us for the big disappointment.
Wait, what? Prepping us for the big disappointment? Hold on, I don't normally search for that kind of vaping news. Hold on a second. From KTLA Local News, LAFD captain severely burned in downtown warehouse explosion, sues vape shop building owners. A Los Angeles Fire Department captain severely burned in the May 2020 explosion inside a downtown LA warehouse has sued the owners of the building and a vaping supply shop housed there, accusing them of hazardous activity, premise liability, and negligence. From Fox 32 Chicago, online vaping companies settle Chicago lawsuit by paying nearly $600,000 in fines. 8 online vaping companies are settling a lawsuit filed by the city of Chicago by paying $584,500 in fines. The lawsuit claimed that the online vaping companies were illegally selling vaping products to minors in Chicago. From WKRC in Cincinnati, not to be confused with WKRP in Cincinnati, vaping industry takes a hit. FDA rejects nearly 1 million flavored e-cigarette products. Thousands of flavored e-cigarette products will disappear from the market. The FDA acted on millions of applications for new or already on the market tobacco products. The FDA rejected nearly 1 million flavored e-cigarette products from being sold. For the last year, it's reviewed applications for tobacco products, many of which were already on the market. James Jarvis is president of the Ohio Vapor Trade Association. My heart breaks for everybody in this industry that has tried so hard. The FDA's decision hits close to home. His wife is a vape store owner and manufactures e-liquids. She was one of the denied applicants. I believe it was somewhere around 700. They had to do it for each flavor and each nicotine strength, he said. Jarvis said all of her products were denied, except tobacco and menthol flavors, which nobody uses, or very few people use, I should say. It takes them back to a time when they were using a product that they're trying to get away from, he said. The FDA targeted flavored tobacco products because they said it's appealing to young people. Jeff Kathman, a co-owner of Cincy Vapors, is terrified for the future. I can tell you this, I'm not going down without a fight. I believe in this product so much, and I believe adults should have the choice of how they get their nicotine delivered. The FDA based its decisions on whether these products can benefit adult smokers enough to overcome health threats to the adults and the children that might use their products. Manufacturers and businesses don't know what's next. One thing about this industry is that it's always creative, and it's going to find a way. What that road might be, no one really knows at this point. The FDA made decisions on 93% of submitted applications. The agency reportedly has not announced a decision on Juul vaping products. Here's a news flash for you out there. Even if the FDA does not authorize any flavored liquid, I'm going to keep making my own. It's really simple. All you got to have is some supercritical fluid if you choose to use it. Oh. Vegetable glycerin, propylene glycol, some flavoring, and watch this. We get out our scale. We take our bottle, put it on the scale, turn it on, make sure it's zeroed out. Then we take our lovely flavor. I bought that from Liquid Barn. And we take and we put that into our jar. Oh, let's see. 11.2 or thereabouts. Oh, that's a little bit over. No big deal. So I get a little more flavor this time. And just to make things a little more interesting, I'm going to take and put a little bit of strawberry in there because I love strawberry. And it goes really good with blue raspberry. So we're going to put some more in here. Oh, let's go about, I don't know, 2.5 grams. How's that? Yeah. We'll just keep going. There we go. That's close enough. And I want it to be a little sweeter. So I'm going to take and put a little bit of this in there. Some super sweet. Oh, I don't know. Yeah, that's good enough. Just like that. And now we're going to put our propylene glycol in there. Let's see, what do I need? About 14 of that? There we go. Give it a little swirl, just like that. And then, I don't even need to measure it. I just top it off with some vegetable glycerin. And now, I've got a new full jar of OG Blue. Yup. Just like that. Give it a little shake. Or leave it sit there for a couple days. Voila! It's that simple. Bam. Now I have my own e-liquid. And you can have it too. It's that simple. But do you want your grandmother to have to go through that process to be able to stay away from deadly combustible cigarettes? Yeah, I don't either. So I think this is regulations are ridiculous. And you know what? The cat's out of the bag. Everybody knows it's very simple to make your own e-liquid, including the politicians. So, what are they doing right now? House Democrats' tax hike on tobacco and vaping may violate Biden's pledge not to raise taxes on anyone making less than $400,000 a year. We talked about this before, too. Almost a month ago, I reported the same basic article from the Philadelphia newspaper. Have you written your representative in government yet? Did you complete the CASA call to action? Or are you one of those people who think your elected officials are bought and paid for, so why bother? Either way, if you haven't stocked up on DIY supplies, now is the time to do it. Which brings me to a news announcement for this channel. The next product up for review comes from Fog Vapory in Fairview Park, Ohio. No, he didn't send it to me. I went there and I bought the newest product that he had available. So, it's up for review this weekend. And I'm also working on an acoustic mix making vape video, so you guys can chill and hang out while I mix some random e-liquid recipes. Make some coils, and then vape with them to see how good they really are. Moving on to international vaping news. While vapers in the United States are cringing at the idea of additional vape taxes, Free Malaysia Today reports a letter to the editor asking for tax revenue from the vaping industry. Wait, what? Finance Minister Tengku Zafrul Aziz has once again proposed raising the country's statutory debt limit to 65% from the current 60%. The proposal underscores the dire financial health the country is in. The country is at a stage where every bit of revenue counts, with COVID-19 showing little signs of abating as variants like Delta and the newer Mu casting a long shadow over our economic recovery. One low-lying fruit the government can consider to boost its revenue is to enhance the tax regime for the vaping industry. Tengku Zafrul, when tabling the 2021 budget last year, announced that the government would be introducing a vape tax. Malaysia's excise duty of 40 cents per milliliter, US, boils down to 9.6 cents per milliliter, for vape liquid is already one of the cheapest worldwide and is slightly less than half the global average, around 20 cents per milliliter. Just putting things into context, in neighboring Philippines it is around 76 cents per milliliter, and in South Korea it is $1.51 per milliliter. Besides boosting government revenues, a steeper tax rate on vaping products also sends the right signal that the government discourages the habit. Just as the government imposes sin tax on cigarette and liquor to discourage the consumption of the items for health reasons, vape liquid should also fall under the same category. Currently, the low tax on such items translates into cheaper prices for products, which is going to lead an uptick in demand, especially among youths who view vaping as trendy and affordable. What? This isn't the vape industry or ex-smokers who are asking for additional taxes on vaping. It's tobacco control Puritans seeking higher taxes to protect their kids. A moron. Do you know what happens when you raise taxes too high or ban things altogether? All you do is grow a black market or increase smoking rates. Exactly like what happened in Nova Scotia after banning vaping product flavors. Not often do you get a real-world case study of the impact of a potential regulation, but Nova Scotia has provided one, and the outcome is clear. Banned flavored vaping products and vapors return to smoking. This is reckless and counterproductive to public health. Is Health Canada going to repeat the same mistake? It sure looks like it. And why vapors of all ages are now making their own e-liquids at home. They don't want to go back to smoking. And since vaping keeps them smoke-free, they need to make what they can't get in the stores. Moving on to Ireland, where tax on vaping could lead to unintended consequences. Vape Business Ireland has warned that increasing the cost of vaping through an excise tax will prevent current smokers from making the switch to a less harmful alternative and could push ex-smokers back to smoking cigarettes. On a daily basis, our members are seeing firsthand the seismic and positive impact vaping continues to have on the lives of those who made the switch from smoking and their families and friends. What we are seeing on the ground is supported by Irish-based research, which continues to demonstrate how vaping products are a successful, less harmful alternative to smoking. An example of such findings includes the latest Irish National Drug and Alcohol Survey, which revealed that 95.5% of vapers are ex or current smokers. Furthermore, we know from Healthy Ireland research that 41% of people who successfully quit smoking did so using vaping products, making vaping the most successful tool for quit attempts after willpower alone. Therefore, vaping must be embraced and encouraged, and not taxed by government if we are anyway serious about pushing smoking rates in the downward direction again. The European Commission is currently completing the review of the EU Tobacco Excise Directive aimed at ensuring the proper functioning of the internal European market and a harmonized approach, indicating that this is likely to deal with a taxation of vapor products on an EU-wide basis. Mr. O'Boyle added, vaping products are not the same as smoking and should be considered as an entirely separate category to smoke tobacco products, especially when it comes to taxation. For over 240,000 Irish people, vaping has played a pivotal and successful role in their quit journey. Well, it certainly looks like the problems facing U.S. vapers are also being experienced around the globe, regardless of where you live. Last week, I reported about Hong Kong considering a bill to ban the importation and sale of all alternative nicotine delivery products, such as e-cigarettes and heated tobacco products. CAFRA responds with, Hong Kong must regulate, not ban vaping. Nancy Lucas writes, with Hong Kong at a crossroads, our experts were keen to respectfully offer their views backed by the latest international evidence. They wanted to be crystal clear. It is the combustion of smoke that is the primary cause of smoking-related diseases, with vaping and heated tobacco products significantly less harmful. Actually, Nancy Lucas wrote the piece for CAFRA, but a whole slew of doctors co-signed this letter to the Honorable Carrie Lam in the office of the Chief Executive in Hong Kong Special Administrative Region for the People's Republic of China. There's a link to the actual letter in the description right below if you're interested. Moving on to some good news. The Middle East Dubai International e-cigarette show just concluded on the 21st of September 2021. And there's some interesting videos from the Dubai World Trade Center. Vupu had a press release about their participation in the event and even announced their surprise debut of the Gene Tree nanotech ceramic core technology. There were more than 200 exhibitors from around the world and tens of thousands of visitors who got to experience something awesome. Man, I wish I would have found vaping a decade ago when the United States had events like this. Moving on to Arab news, where we find REGS officially launching their products in the kingdom as the Saudis turn to e-cigarettes. Unfortunately, in the same article, we also find Dr. Abdulaziz Shalom, a consultant in emergency medicine at Saudi Airlines Medical Services, misinformed readers when he said e-cigarettes and vape devices are not an alternative to quitting smoking because they are harmful to the body just as cigarettes are, because they also contain nicotine. How many times do we have to tell these people? And how many of these doctors do not understand that it isn't the nicotine that causes cancer? It isn't the nicotine that causes these problems. Because then he started talking about electronic smoking devices exploding and saying that vapes cause cancer and bronchitis and COPD and affects arteries, including cardiovascular disease. You know what? As long as these media outlets are allowed to spout misinformation, smokers will keep smoking, and vapors are going to find burdensome taxes, regulations, and bans of the products they need to stay away from deadly combustible cigarettes. So here's some science from the University of Edinburgh to combat this misinformation. A new study reveals common misunderstandings among tobacco and e-cigarette users related to the risk of harm from nicotine. Those with serious mental health conditions were more likely to overemphasize the risk of harm from nicotine, potentially discouraging the switch from tobacco cigarettes to nicotine-containing products. A new Spectrum-funded study from researchers at King's College London and Public Health England has revealed common misconceptions about the risks of harm from nicotine among UK adults with a history of tobacco and/or e-cigarette use. The study analyzed responses to an online survey of 3,400 adults who smoke cigarettes and/or use e-cigarettes, or had suddenly stopped. Researchers found that a large proportion of those surveyed incorrectly understood the risk of harm from nicotine in cigarettes and from other products that contain nicotine, including e-cigarettes and nicotine replacement therapies. This was particularly evident in those with serious mental health conditions. According to the study, less than 10% of those with serious mental distress correctly identified that none or a very small amount of the health risks of smoking cigarettes come from nicotine. Rates of smoking and related morbidity and mortality are known to be higher among those experiencing mental ill health. The authors emphasize the importance of correcting misconceptions related to the risks of harm from nicotine in order to help those who smoke and experience mental ill health to switch to less harmful nicotine-containing products. The paper's conclusion is as follows. Among adults with a history of tobacco and/or e-cigarette use, those with serious mental distress appeared to have less accurate harm perceptions of nicotine and nicotine-containing products than those with no or low distress, despite reporting similar sources of information. So it's no wonder the Truth Initiative is taking advantage of those with mental illness to promote a depression stick. What's worse is Twitter and YouTube are accomplices in this atrocity that is taking place right now. Well, that wraps up the Global 20 Vaping News Science and Advocacy Report for the week ending September 19th, 2021. I truly appreciate every single one of you for subscribing and watching this weekly news report. Don't forget to hit the like or the dislike button and let me know what you think. Or feel free to leave me a comment if the stuff you heard in the news report got you all fired up. So until next week, be good to each other and keep on vaping.